अब की बार नौसेना का वार. Prime Minister Narendra Modi's message from the hangar of the Swadeshi warship INS Vikrant was clear to India's adversaries and enemies alike. The Prime Minister spent Deepavali on board the 45,000-ton displacement made in India aircraft carrier INS Vikrant. He addressed sailors of the INS Vikrant carrier battle group. He emphasized how Pakistan in the recent Operation Sindoor feared India's naval power. He spoke of the strength of Atmanirbhar Bharat and that big Swadeshi push post-2014, proudly talking about how now new indigenous warships or submarines are being inducted into the Navy every 40 days. He specifically mentioned the BrahMos supersonic Shakti. Now, there are rapid developments that are taking place across this region and the world, and over the course of the next 1 hour, we analyze the implications of Prime Minister Narendra Modi saying, Jnanaya Danaya Cha Rakshanaya, which means the noble use their knowledge, their education for charity, for welfare, and for the protection of the weak. I'm Gaurav Sawant. We get you all details, but first, let's listen in to Prime Minister Narendra Modi on board INS Vikrant.
हमें गर्व है कि पिछले एक दशक से हमारी सेनाएं तेजी से आत्मनिर्भरता की ओर कदम बढ़ा रही है. हमारी सेनाओं ने हजारों ऐसे सामानों की लिस्ट बनाई और तय किया कि अब ये सामान बाहर से नहीं मंगवाया जाएगा. नतीजा ये हुआ कि सेना के लिए जरूरी ज्यादातर साजो सामान अब देश में ही तैयार होने लगा है. औसतन हर 40 दिन में एक नया स्वदेशी युद्धपोत या पनडुब्बी नेवी में शामिल की जा रही है. ब्रह्मोस को तो नाम ही ऐसा है कि सुनते ही कई लोगों को चिंता हो जाती कि ब्रह्मोस आ रहा है क्या. अब दुनिया के कई देश इन मिसाइलों को खरीदना चाहते हैं. मुझे विश्व के जो भी लोग मिलते हैं उनकी इच्छा एक होती है कि हमें भी मिल जाए. भारत तीनों ही सेनाओं के लिए हथियार और उपकरण एक्सपोर्ट करने की क्षमता बिल्ड कर रहा है. हमारा लक्ष्य है कि भारत पूरी दुनिया के टॉप डिफेंस एक्सपोर्टर देशों में शामिल हो. पिछले एक दशक में हमारा डिफेंस एक्सपोर्ट 30 गुना से अधिक बढ़ गया है और सफलता के पीछे हमारी बहुत बड़ी भूमिका डिफेंस स्टार्टअप की है, स्वदेशी डिफेंस इकाइयों की है. अभी कुछ ही महीने पहले हमने देखा है विक्रांत ने अपने नाम से ही पूरे पाकिस्तान की रातों की नींद उड़ा दी थी. जिसका नाम ही दुश्मन के साहस का अंत कर दे, वो है आईएनएस विक्रांत. वो है अफ्रीका से लेकर साउथ ईस्ट एशिया तक आपदा के समय, विपत्ति के समय दुनिया भारत को विश्व बंधु के रूप में देखती है. 2014 में हमारे पड़ोसी देश मालदीव में पानी का संकट आया. हमने ऑपरेशन नीर चलाया। हमारी नेवी स्वच्छ पानी लेकर मालदीव पहुंची। 2017 में श्रीलंका में बाढ़ की विभीषिका आई। भारत ने सबसे पहले मदद का हाथ लंबाया। 2018 में इंडोनेशिया में सुनामी की तबाही आई। भारत राहत बचाव के कामों में इंडोनेशिया के लोगों के साथ कंधे से कंधा मिलाकर खड़ा हो गया। इसी तरह म्यांमार में भूकंप से आया विनाश, या फिर 2019 में मोजाम्बिक और 2020 में मेडागास्कर का संकट हो, भारत हर जगह सेवा की भावना से पहुंचा। भारत की परंपरा रही है ज्ञानाय दानाय च रक्षणाय, ज्ञानाय दानाय च रक्षणाय, अर्थात हमारा विज्ञान, हमारी समृद्धि और हमारी ताकत मानवता की सेवा और मानवता की सुरक्षा के लिए होती है। आज जब इंटरकनेक्टेड वर्ल्ड में देशों की अर्थव्यवस्था और प्रगति समुद्री रास्तों पर निर्भर है, तब भारत की नेवी ग्लोबल स्टेबिलिटी में अहम भूमिका निभा रही है।
Jnanaya danaya cha rakshanaya. The evil may use their knowledge to torment others, but the good, the noble, they use their education, they use their knowledge for charity and to protect those in need of protection. To help us decode Prime Minister Narendra Modi's message on this Deepavali to the enemy to the west from the western seaboard, joining me on this India First Deepavali special are Vice Admiral Shekhar, former Flag Officer Commanding-in-Chief of Indian Navy's Western Naval Command, Lieutenant General Syed Hasnain, former General Officer Commanding of the Kashmir Corps, Air Marshal Sanjeev Kapoor, former Director General Flight Safety and Inspections, Dr. Tara Karthas, former Director of India's National Security Council Secretariat, and senior journalist Sandeep Unnithan, journalist and analyst. And let me begin by wishing all our esteemed guests and our viewers a very happy Deepavali. I've benefited so much from your wealth and knowledge, your wealth of knowledge, sirs. Welcome. Thank you for joining me on Diwali. Admiral Sinha, the Prime Minister's day at sea is something which has been a fascinating experience. But the Prime Minister on board INS Vikrant on Diwali, post Operation Sindoor, has a special significance, a special message. Sir, has the Prime Minister signaled, "Ab ki baar Nausena ka vaar"?
Well, thank you very much, Gaurav, for getting me on your show. Let me first wish a very happy Diwali to all my co-panel and your viewers. Namaskar. The big message to my mind is that Prime Minister is standing on board the Indian-built ship. And he is in the Arabian Sea of Karwar and Goa. And he has mentioned as to what the Vikrant is capable of doing. And it's a very, very clear signal that, look, we did not use the Navy in a very operational role, but Navy was performing the duties of not letting any of the foreign ships, for example, Turkey and China, to enter Karachi and supply the spare parts which they were running out of and the weapon systems, ammunition. So that's a very big task. And they were all along the Makran coast. Should there have been an order, most of the targets, Gaurav, which have been hit by the BrahMos missile, the same BrahMos missile is fitted on board the naval ships. In fact, the ships were the first ones to get the BrahMos. They can actually hit every possible target that was hit by other means. So I would say that it's a time and again the message is being sent. Recently in Lucknow, the BrahMos missile production on the day, very auspicious day,
Yes.
that was also shown. Now, if you connect all these dots, we are really saying a message that, look, stop ranting left, right, and center. We have enough power in reserve which can actually decimate you. So I
Very
think this.
good point. Enough power in reserve to decimate you. General Hasnain, naval power was used to coerce the enemy into staying inside the harbor. Pakistan is believed to have shifted its warships to the civilian port, the civilian harbor, to protect their ships and submarines. How do you read the Prime Minister's message, sir?
Thank you, Gaurav, first of all, for inviting me for your program. And a happy Deepavali to my fellow panelists and all viewers. Uh, I can recall immediately, historically, 1971 and the role of the Navy from then onwards. What the Navy achieved in 1971, maybe lots of people may not be aware of it, but today, the Prime Minister's presence on board the INS Vikrant obviously is a reminder to the nation, to the international community, to our adversaries, that exists a force, an organization completely modernized, completely self reliant, and ready to take on any threats in the maritime region of India. It's an important aspect that, particularly, the Prime Minister's presence is making clear that we are not dependent on anyone for our requirements. Everything is being done today internally within India. Atmanirbhar Bharat is something which has come and will continue to remain. Very importantly, the message which normally comes out from most geopolitical issues is that India has not paid sufficient attention to its maritime zone and that we are very continental in our focus on national security in terms of our northern and western borders. I think this is a very good balancing act being done here with the Prime Minister's presence on Deepavali, a 1,700 strong force aboard the INS Vikrant, the 45,000 ton ship which is there in the a flagship of the country, which is there for everyone to see. And as to your original, the first question which you asked me, what role and what its performance of the Navy actually was at this particular time in Operation Sindoor, there's no doubt that deterrence is as important as war fighting.
Yes.
War fighting is only one subset of conflict. Deterrence continues to remain always. The presence of the Indian Navy, the manner in which it was formatted for battle at this particular time, ensured that our adversaries would think 10 times before they would join battle in the maritime zone anywhere. To that extent, I think in an 88-hour conflict, the presence of the Indian Navy in the high seas made a huge difference.
Air Marshal Kapoor, the Navy also has a very strong air arm with fighter jets. And now with Rafale Marines coming in, Pakistan has additional reason to worry given Pakistan's narrow coastline, because Raksha Mantri Rajnath Singh, as Admiral Sinha also pointed out, had made it very clear, no part of Pakistan is safe from India's BrahMos supersonic cruise missiles.
Yeah, very good greetings to all of you on Diwali. And the things which Admiral Sinha and General Hasnain has said, I like to build on that. See, Indian naval arm, of which Admiral Sinha has been a part for many, many years, have known him personally for many decades, have strengthened over the years. Today, naval air arm is very potent, and the induction of Rafale M, it's not 26 aircrafts for Indian Navy, it will become 62 aircrafts for Indian Armed Forces, combined with the Indian Air Force. So the interoperability, the simulator, the training, and the tactics and other aspects is one. But coming to weaponry, which was your main questions, the advantage of BrahMos is that it can be integrated on any platform, be it Indian Air Force or Indian Naval aeroplane. And the good part is that no part of Pakistan, no part, the depth is in any case within the reach. Now with S-400 being deployed, the platforms are not able to come closer. And with our reach of weapons, there's hardly any target left in the country which could be outside the reach of Indian Air Force and Indian naval aeroplanes. So that is a case which they would be worrying at their end, I suppose.
And Dr. Kartha, on the 10th of May, Pakistan was begging for a ceasefire. And yet, just a couple of days ago, Pakistan's radical Islamist army chief, Field Marshal Asim Munir, was threatening India. Now, do you think the Prime Minister was reiterating India's resolve to punish Pakistan's state terror? Because considering many of those zombies in Pakistan have one, limited IQ, two, limited memory.
Oh yeah, I think there's been a fair amount of messaging going on from the defense minister, from the, from the service chiefs, from the prime minister.
Okay,
But
Dr. Tara Kartha, give me a moment as we try and reestablish our link with you. I think you're on mute. Dr. Tara Kartha, we cannot hear you.
okay, I
Yeah,
don't know
now we
why.
can. Yes, now
Yeah.
we can hear you. Go on.
Yeah.
Okay, I was just, yeah, I mean, yeah, definitely there's been a range of, warnings from the defense minister, the chiefs, everybody on Pakistan that don't try this adventurous rubbish again. Despite the funny fact is that the whole tone of Asim Munir's speech, which he threatened recently, again, we're in a nuclearized environment, all of this is based on the assumption of Pakistan victory. Now, if that is the basis for your strategy making, I'm sorry, you're on very bad foundations. You cannot kid yourself when it comes to defense policy making. And he's trying to kid the whole world. That is a very bad idea. But I just want to say something slightly off the. Hats off to the Prime Minister. I mean, he is he's every Diwali, like you just showed, he's with the forces, he's with them. I think that is as strong a message as any BrahMos. When the Prime Minister is standing with you and speaking to you, and look at it, I mean, it's amazing. And the third thing I want to say is, the fact that the Pakistanis are now trying to get the US into Pasni. They are worried about this whole thing. So they are trying every trick in the countryside to get the US into there, because Pasni was where all these people went and hid. When the Navy came threatening them, they went and hid in Pasni. So the hope, as far as I can analyze, the Pasni thing makes no sense. And I don't know that a transaction US president will come in there at all, but it is something we need to. So things are changing very rapidly. And I think the Navy, when hats off to the Navy, they have been, with due deference to the other services, they have been at the forefront in innovation and make in India.
Oh, absolutely. That's a very interesting point you make, Sandeep. Whether it's BrahMos supersonic cruise missile, Vikrant, a warship or a submarine that's entering Indian Navy every 40 days, as the Prime Minister said. The Prime Minister kept reiterating India's growing strength and reliance on Atmanirbhar Bharat vis-a-vis a failed state that's desperately, while seeking arms, begging for arms. I mean, it's ill-equipped to defend itself, Pakistan.
Absolutely, Gaurav. And what better scenario than Operation Sindoor? What unraveled in the 88 hours of Operation Sindoor was the fact that the Indian Navy converted the Pakistan Navy into a peacetime Navy without even firing a shot. Our awesome teams have demonstrated how the Pakistan Navy was hiding among civilian berths. They were nowhere to be seen, because the memory of what happened in 1971, Gaurav, in 30 minutes on the night of 4th of December, the Pakistan Navy suffered one of the worst naval defeats by any Navy post the Second World War, where in the span of 30 minutes, they lost one destroyer damaged, one ammunition carrying ship coming from the United States was destroyed, one minesweeper was shattered. This kind of a ship-to-ship conflict has not happened since in the history of human naval warfare. And that record stands. And that is what the Prime Minister was emphasizing today. If you see very clearly, there is a BrahMos missile, a vertically launched BrahMos missile right behind him. And the Prime Minister kept reiterating the fact that you have to win Indian wars with Indian solutions. There is no other way but for Atmanirbhar Bharat. And there is also that motto of INS Vikrant, Gaurav, which I wanted to repeat here for the benefit of our viewers. INS Vikrant is the largest indigenous warship. It was commissioned by the Prime Minister in September 2022. And the motto of the INS Vikrant, Gaurav, is Jayam Sama Yuddha Sprudha, which means that I defeat those who dare fight against me. And the Prime Minister's messaging is very clear, Gaurav, that you can fight Indian wars only with Indian weapons, indigenous weapons. And this is very important given the fact that this is his 12th Diwali with troops.
Yes.
He's had 12 since 2014. It is his first with the Indian Navy. So that itself is huge signaling. He's telling Pakistan, apart from what we just discussed, that look, if the Pakistanis themselves admit that you are facing a two-front situation, Pakistan, a hostile Afghanistan on one side and India on the other, the sea frontier, Gaurav, 1,000 kilometers of Pakistan's coastline, the Indian Navy has the ability to transform Pakistan into a landlocked country. That is what the Prime Minister is actually hinting at today. That the Navy will strike so swiftly that Pakistan will become a landlocked state in a matter of hours.
Admiral Sinha, India was able to display. We were able to punch holes in Pakistan's air defenses, take down their radars, take down 11 air bases, military bases, missile centers, and display the capability that we can attack from sea. But Admiral, since you're both, former Grey Eagle, you're a former aviator with the Navy, should India have given a trailer during Operation Sindoor, a tri-services trailer, or does the fear factor remain more effective?
Well, Gaurav, I think this question has been doing rounds in many think tanks and even in the official circles. But I think the Prime Minister had laid down what was the intention, what was the aim of the entire thing. And he said that once the aim is achieved, we will stop. So if you take that into account, if the Navy was not used initially to decimate those targets that you just mentioned, then I think overdoing something is not very good idea. Because, in the armed forces, they say that you select the aim and pursue the aim and then you stop. It's not only that how you enter into war, you should also know how to retreat from the war. Unfortunately, some countries like US, they haven't learned this and they have to be kicked out from every country that they have got in. So I would say that you are right. Deterrence, to have power to do something, is more risky for a country which hasn't seen the effect of that power. So I think that, use of power only when it is required and not overdo the thing, because the Army and the Air Force had done absolutely remarkable job. Had there been any problem, had there been any requirement, the Navy would have pitched in, because most of the target data was actually fed to most of the BrahMos missile on board the ships. Okay. And they were so positioned that they could take on even the terrorist camps in the first night. So,
absolutely.
they also have loiter bombs. I mean, that can be used and allowed to take out the. So I would actually want to just add two more things. Dr. Tara Katha mentioned a very good thing about Pasni. She's quite right. Pasni is not going to be any very much use, and I don't think the Americans are going to use it for anything other than taking the minerals out, rare earth minerals out of Balochistan. If they do manage, bring it by train up to Pasni and then take it by ships. They cannot put warships. As it is, their warship inside the Gulf are vulnerable to Iran. They are vulnerable to China, which is just waiting to start operating from Gwadar. I wouldn't be surprised if China has an Indian Ocean fleet either on the east of African coast or on Gwadar or Djibouti.
In fact, that's very interesting. Is that why the US also wants to come in? But that is what makes these waters contested waters in times to come. And that's why we need a much stronger Navy. And I want to come back to that point in just a moment. But I want to draw in General Hasnain to what Sandeep just referred to. Pakistan's biggest nightmare is a two-front war. Pakistan had to go on a bent knee to Qatar, to Doha, and seek, Qatar's help and Turkey's help to get Afghanistan just to agree to a ceasefire. Clearly, TTA, Tehreek-e-Taliban Afghanistan, General Hasnain, may back off for now, but TTP, Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, and the Baloch Liberation Army, they will not back down or back out. They will continue to bleed Pakistan both in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and in Balochistan. So Pakistan's worst nightmare, has it already started, sir?
Absolutely, Gaurav. There's no doubt about it. The presence of Amir Khan Muttaqi in New Delhi has obviously sent a huge message across. In fact, if you look at it from a strategic angle, the first country to whom of the Taliban, Afghanistan, have actually reached out in any strategic manner has been India. And Pakistan was under the assumption that Afghanistan was just its backyard and nothing more. The strategic depth that is always spoken about by Mirza Aslam Beg in the heydays of the 80s, that is something which is now a distant past. Because Pakistan has now got to look at many other areas to claim its strategic depth. As far as its actual strategic depth, which it's claimed all this while in Afghanistan, now is squarely in our favor as such. So there's no doubt about it that the situation in which it has emanated at the moment, and the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan's various actions in conjunction with various other elements inside Pakistan, the Baloch Liberation Army, of course, the Labaik, for example, in Punjab,
Yes.
and similar such organizations all over Pakistan have actually paralyzed internal security within Pakistan. And if Pakistan, why should it be fighting two fronts? It actually has to fight 2.5 to 3 fronts, which is something that they used to always contemplate about India having to fight. This is what Pakistan is being forced to fight today itself.
That's a very interesting point you raised, General, and I will come back to you on it. But let me bring in Air Marshal Kapoor on the point that you've just raised. Pakistan is hemmed in on all sides. It's bleeding along the LAC post-Operation Sindoor. Air Marshal Kapoor reports seem to indicate the DGMO said 100 plus terrorists killed. The Home Minister also indicated his figures were much higher than 100, but 100 is what they said in Parliament. I am told that Pakistan, in Lipa Valley, 2 battalions were interchanging. They've had more than 300 casualties and fatalities in the Lipa Valley alone and along the LC. More than 800 soldiers of Pakistan are dying almost every year along Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and Baluchistan. 180 plus, and that's a very conservative figure given by Pakistanis themselves. 180 plus killed in Tehreek-e-Labbaik protests in Lahore and Muridke. Now, Asim Munir should be a very worried man. He's losing soldiers and civilians every day across the country.
Hey, Gaurav, for your benefit of your viewers, we have been saying it time and again. The narrative which they give to your people is totally different. Everything is controlled there by ISI. The media is controlled. The narrative is controlled. So any common person, what you just mentioned, is not aware in Pakistan. They have left their dead in Kargil on the heights.
Yes.
They have left their dead after this train hijack. They disowned the people on the first pretext. And even I was reading somewhere after Op Sindoor, the bulldozers were just move around on the airfields and leveled the whole place without even having the basic courtesy to give the last rites to the dead. They were just buried and as if nothing has happened. And they are actually controlling and gripping everything. But the question is, for how long? For how long can they fool their own people? The next issue which is coming up is the closeness which the Afghan. And if you see the politics, whensoever the head of state or a important dignitary is in the other country, they do the action. So this attack by the Pakistani Air Force cutting across Afghanistan happened at the time when the foreign minister was here. And this coincided with retaliation wherein the Afghans claimed to have killed 58 Pakistani troops, which the Pakistanis 2 days later said that there were 23 casualties. Now, leave aside the figures which are coming out from the either side, but the fact of the matter is that the trust has been breached. And today, Afghanistan is looking for holding on to its defense because they realize now that in combat, they will be able to take on, but in air power, they need help. They need help because if they have to secure their places, because about $5 to $7 billion I was reading worth of air defense equipment was left behind by the Americans when they pulled out in 2021. They would need people, they would need an air force. And for the benefit of your viewers, the Afghan officers, cadets are regularly trained in our academies. It is not that, so the bonhomie between the two countries exists. Now it has to be just stepped up.
Okay.
There is a request to 20 plus countries to train with Indian Air Force to become pilots. So I'm sure Afghanistan would request India to train the pilots in coming days.
Very interesting. Dr. Tarakar tha, Amir Khan Muqtaki, the Taliban foreign minister or the Afghan foreign minister is visiting India once again. And this has been confirmed from the Afghanistan side. I want to understand from you. So they're seeking military assistance from India. They're seeking strategic assistance from India. when he came last time, his country was bleeding. Could Pakistan try something once again, either bleed Afghanistan or bleed India, either from the east or the northeast? But is there that signaling from India that there would be massive and unaffordable costs for Pakistan? And perhaps it could be from either side.
Okay, that's okay. I'm going to answer this as diplomatically as I can. Since 2 years ago, I mean, this was 1.5 years ago, in a track 1.5 dialogue with the Pakistanis, they were literally begging the US to come back. They were literally begging the US for attention. Now you have a former former NSA writing in a prominent journal about how Pakistan is the best buddy of the US. In answer to that, your question, they may very well raise the stakes in Afghanistan. For them, they see it as cheap because the army doesn't care if a bunch of people die on the ground, it doesn't bother them. If they raise the stakes significantly in Afghanistan, they will try to get the US into it either in some manner, maybe not troops, but like you said last time, maybe Bagram. I mean, I don't know, but this is very likely. So we have to decide what our position is going to be in that. We'd have to be pretty cautious, certainly training as much as we can. And let's see where that goes further.
Okay. Okay. Sandeep, Pakistan's economy is in a shambles. The free lunch at White House clearly comes at an unaffordable cost for Pakistan because reports seem to indicate that Donald Trump wants Asim Munir and the Pakistani state to not just recognize Israel, but in times to come, look at sending a peacekeeping force to Gaza. Now, Asim Munir might as well commit harakiri.
Absolutely, Gaurav. As you mentioned, there are no free lunches, and certainly no free lunches in Donald Trump's White House. And Field Marshal Munir would probably be realizing that the time to pay those bills is now, and it could, range from anything, as you were saying, to sending troops to Gaza, which would be suicidal for Pakistan. At this point, to deploy troops over there, they possibly would not come back to a united Pakistan. Even the breakup of Pakistan could accelerate if that actually happens, given the kind of radicalization that is there within Pakistan today in 2025. The other thing, Gaurav, is that, the President, Donald Trump, has been repeatedly asking for Bagram Air Base. So one has to actually, look at these, what Pakistan has been doing with Afghanistan. Is there a larger plan over here? The fact is that the US president says he wants Bagram, and suddenly there's these clashes which erupt between Pakistan and Afghanistan. As Dr. Karta was saying, that there is more than meets the eye over here. The fact is that the United States is trying to come in to Afghanistan, re-enter AFPAC in some way or the other, and the Pakistan military is, literally rolling out the red carpet and telling them, please come back, take whatever you want, take air bases, take naval ports, build railway lines, take our minerals, but please come back into the region. Because, Gaurav, the larger point is that Pakistan is a rentier state.
Yes.
It needs an external sponsor. It cannot run this economy this way it is. And we've seen what happened to Pakistan when the US withdrew from Afghanistan in 2021 to right now. In the last 4 years, the economy has been close to collapsing. It's living from hand to hand out, right? So this is like literally crisis mode now for them. And Munir has no option but to bring the Americans back in whatever shape or form and do whatever, they want him to do, which could range from the scenarios that we've been just discussing, Gaurav.
Hasnain, what if India were to position, and is that even feasible, have a couple of squadrons at that Bagram Air Base and have a training division in Afghanistan? Would that be Pakistan's worst nightmare coming true?
Gaurav, theoretically, yes. But I think one has to think this through far more. Because you see, even the Americans, when they are proposing coming to Bagram, I think this is a top of the head kind of a proposal, because ultimately you got to remember, you can't just remain isolated in Bagram. There is an entire issue of security around that entire region. You would be aware the number of terrorist groups, international terrorist groups who are functioning today in some of the ungoverned areas inside Afghanistan. Perhaps the United States will have to consider that and look at that also. So for India, I think to my mind it would be a slight overreach at this particular time. However, as our relationship develops with Afghanistan, and I'm sure it will, considering the fact that we are one of the first nations which have been approached strategically as such, I do envisage that in the future, in partnership perhaps or something of that nature, we may look at Bagram definitely.
Okay.
We would definitely want some presence in Afghanistan in terms of training facilities and creation of training facilities. The most important thing for India and Afghanistan is our soft power.
Yes.
This is something which has actually brought the Taliban to New Delhi, if you really look at it. The
Yes.
aspect of medical visas, the aspect of the construction of dams and power stations and power grids and things of that nature. No other country has done this as the way that India has done. That's
Okay.
what the Taliban is actually looking for.
It indeed is, but India has a civilizational history. Air Marshal Kapoor, if we've sent our forces anywhere, and External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar, once also spoke about it in terms of diplomacy. India never occupied any territory or took any territory by force, went, helped, returned, Sri Lanka from the times of Raja Ram, or even 1971 war, went into Bangladesh, liberated, came back. If we were to position a couple of squadrons in Afghanistan, train the Afghanistan Air Force, if we were to have a training division in Afghanistan, wouldn't that be Pakistan's worst nightmare? And would Taliban be responsible for their security, their protection?
What General Hasnain said, that hypothetically, yes, it is possible. But in my guess, it will be second or the third step. In case the Indian Air Force is approached by the Afghan government to train the pilots, they would be trained here in India in our academies. And now, the request which I just mentioned in the previous discussion, that there has been request for about 20 countries to train the pilots. Today, about 15 air forces want to do exercise with Indian Air Force. Today, about 56 countries want to send their officers for advanced courses, be it higher command or NDC, to India. Why India is certainly so important for the world? Because they have realized that our training is one of the best in the world, and the product which passes out from here is of great importance. When we go with our platforms to exercise with US Air Force, they are learning and seeing how the tactics have evolved over platforms which they will have to fight somewhere else. So
Okay.
that they have an agenda.
Okay.
But coming specifically to Afghanistan, they will have to start from scratch, be it their surface-to-air weapons, be it their air defense and other equipment, including the pilot training. Of course, Afghanistan, in my opinion, will approach us, and we will help them in case the bandwidth so exists.
Okay, because right now, Dr. Tara Kartha, when you look at the situation, Pakistan is in trouble if there's pressure on Asim Munir to recognize Israel, especially with Jerusalem part of Israel. Asim Munir, can he convince Pakistan that to wage jihad against India, they may have to recognize Israel or get into Trump's good books, get weapons and systems from America? And what is India's best case scenario to counter that?
That's a very interesting. Admittedly, I didn't think of that. But I just want to say one thing first is that, getting into Afghanistan might be exactly what Pakistan wants you to do. So you have to exercise due caution there. However, you can go in with another country, say Russia. Say, oh, your aircraft are positioned there together. That is possible. And perhaps other countries who want to help Afghanistan defend itself. That is definitely a possibility. But will your question as to will they be okay with recognizing Israel? I don't think so. Things have gone too far.
Yes.
This would have been possible, say, 6-7 years ago. Maybe he could have, because in fact, Musharraf reached out, if you remember, and
Yes.
tried to get Israel. He was rebuffed. Not now, not with this kind of, chaos which has gone on in Gaza. And it will create a lot. Their whole, the basis of their power is all these jihadis are floating around, right? And if these guys then now start going against the army for recognizing Israel, they're going to be in serious trouble.
And perhaps is that the reason why the Pakistan army stands accused of orchestrating the Tehreek-e-Labbaik protests and then opening fire there are some reports that seem to indicate hundreds have been killed. There are some reports that seem to indicate over 1,000 have been killed. But over 100 Pakistan army soldiers and civilians have been neutralized in the past several days along the AFPAC border. So bad was the situation that virtually on a bent knee, Pakistan's defense minister, army chief, various top brass, they were reaching out to Doha, to Qatar to broker a ceasefire. Now there is a ceasefire in place. So the agreement that's been reached during this high-level negotiations in Doha between Pakistan's defense minister Khwaja Asif and Afghanistan's acting defense minister Mullah Yaqoob, mediated both by Qatar and Turkey, the two nations have committed to setting up a permanent mechanism for maintaining peace at the border and ensuring long-term stability. But do keep in mind, Afghanistan does not recognize the Durand line. It does not recognize the border. Both sides will hold follow-up meeting to ensure the truce holds and peace is implemented through a reliable and sustainable manner. And this after Pakistani airstrikes in Kabul. Now, there are some reports in Afghanistan that seem to indicate that Islamabad has apologized to Kabul for the airstrikes. What we are now trying to figure out is, will this peace hold? Sandeep, you've been speaking to sources in Afghanistan. They don't even recognize the Durand line. In fact, Doha had to issue a press release twice just to be able to send across that message, because Afghanistan says they don't recognize the Durand line. So whether peace will hold remains a big question.
Absolutely, Gaurav. And there is a lot of anger in Afghanistan right now with what's been going on, the Pakistani airstrikes, the drone strikes, the fact that they killed 3 cricket players, Gaurav. That is the turning point. The fact is that, cricket was gaining so much popularity in Afghanistan. It's, seeing nothing but war for several decades, and their cricket and their cricketing team is something that they're really proud of. The Pakistani airstrikes that kill cricketers, there's a lot of anger over that. The fact is that Afghanistan, standing by and watching helplessly as the cities are being targeted from the air, have warned that they will draw blood across the Durand line, which they don't recognize, if the longer that Pakistan keeps up with these attacks. So this peace, Gaurav, what's been achieved in Qatar is a very fragile peace. It can break up at any moment. There could be fighting again. We've seen that in several occasions in the past. The fact is that what Pakistan is asking of Afghanistan, that is to shut down all the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan camps, it's unacceptable to the Afghan people because, as you said, they don't recognize the Durand line. And possibly the fight that Pakistan has been taking into Afghanistan could well end up in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, which is this gigantic province of Pakistan, primarily made of Pashtun people. So that is an area of concern for Pakistan, that, it could not be fighting in Afghanistan. The fight could actually be in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. That insurgency that is raging there right now, Gaurav, that could just spin out of control, and it could well be what happened in 1971 with East Pakistan. And here you're looking not at the Bengali people, you're looking at the Pashtuns, Gaurav, who've been fighting literally for thousands of years. They know no other language but violence and war. And so the Pakistan army, I feel, Gaurav, is bitten off more than it can chew. There is no country.
That's the trouble in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and in Balochistan, Admiral Sinha. That's the twin trouble that Pakistan clearly cannot handle at this stage, given the number of fatalities they're receiving every other day. But in this scenario, could Pakistan try and attack India either through the east or the northeast in an attempt to unite their country? Or does Pakistan realize if there is a terror attack in India, Pakistan will bleed harder?
Gaurav, these are all mad people. When you're lying absolutely quietly, they will do something which will trigger a bigger conflict. And that's exactly what happened in Pahalgam. It was all very quiet, and all of a sudden this Pahalgam happened, and you see after that what happened in Operation Sindoor. I would think that if they have any good sense, they would not like to trigger any war with India while they are fighting with Afghanistan. Certainly, they cannot handle these two places. Because I can tell you one thing, that if there is a conflict with India and the Afghans also going ahead at the same time, the Pak army will be virtually absolutely in tatters. I don't think they can handle so many battles at one time. But coming back to the Afghans, I spent a little bit of time with some of the very senior leaders of the Pashtuns and Tajik origin. they hate Pakistani.
Yes.
They hate Pakistani to the extent, unfortunately, what has happened in Pakhtunkhwa, the large number of Pashtuns who are Pakistani citizens, obviously, they have done much better in their, in the personal lives, and financially they are better off. And therefore, there is one section which does not want, once again, the Taliban to come and, talk about the decimation of the, the Durand line. But there are a larger number of people who want to unite with their brethren on the other side. And that time, that kind of bonhomie is so strong that I'm sure Pakistan will not be able to handle this at all unless they smoke a peace pipe with them and give them some kind of autonomy. Is going to continue to bleed Pakistan no end.
And we'll be tracking that story very closely. But I want to shift focus to another story that will show you the importance of Atmanirbhar Bharat in defense when it comes to conflict. Because we're just shifting focus slightly, taking you to the White House. Tensions flared up inside the White House on Friday. There was this fiery meeting between US President Donald Trump and Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelenskyy. Information that has filtered out of White House seems to indicate that it virtually turned into a shouting match. Donald Trump was cursing throughout, and at one point of time, he just picked up and threw aside a Ukrainian battlefield map, telling President Zelenskyy that he was sick of looking at it. According to officials who briefed some journalists on this meeting, Donald Trump urged Ukraine to actually surrender the entire Donbas region to Russia, echoing talking points made by President Vladimir Putin, the Russian president, during a phone call with the American president a day before. Trump reportedly warned President Zelenskyy, and the quote said, if Putin wants it, he will destroy you, and insisted that Ukraine is losing the war. Zelenskyy had come down to Washington hoping that he'd secure that long-range Tomahawk cruise missile. But Donald Trump said no. Instead, he proposed a territorial swap that would see Ukraine give up the Donbas region, parts of Donetsk and Luhansk. President Zelenskyy rejected this plan, calling it dangerous and one-sided. He returned to Kyiv, urging allies not to appease Russia, and called for decisive steps to counter Moscow's aggression. Listen in.
I think that President Putin wants to end the war, or I wouldn't be talking this way. I think he wants to end the war. I spoke to him yesterday for 2.5 hours. We went through a lot of details. He wants to get it ended. I think that President Zelenskyy wants to get it ended. Now we have to get it done. They don't like each other. I say that in front of President Zelenskyy, but I say it in front of President Putin too. They have tremendous bad blood. It's really is what is holding up, I think, a settlement. I think we're going to get it done, and we have to make it long-lasting. As I said in the Middle East, everlasting, right? Everlasting. And the Middle East is a much more complicated situation. You know, we had 59 countries involved, and every one of them agreed. And it's, it's sort of amazing. Most people didn't think that was doable. This is going to be something I really believe that's going to get done. I had a very good talk yesterday with President Putin. I think he wants to get it done. It's the president, and the president. Okay, 3 presidents. And I'm the mediator president. Tomahawks are very dangerous weapons. They're incredible weapons. But they're a very dangerous weapon, and it could mean big, escalation. It could mean a lot of bad things can happen. Tomahawks are a big deal.
Will the U.S. give Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine?
Well, I mean, the president right now is certainly hearing that request from the Ukrainians. We know that it's something that they want. That's something the president's going to ultimately decide, but he has not yet made the decision to give Tomahawks to Ukraine.
Yeah, we spoke about Tomahawks. I'm open with it. We want very much, yes. And the president already, I think that American side said that. Look, we have to understand, because we don't have. I mean, we need them, and this is the position of American side for today. But nobody. I mean, nobody canceled this dialogue, this topic. Yes. So we just we have to work on it. I think that Russians afraid about Tomahawks, really afraid, because it's a strong weapon, and they know what we have, what kind of weapon we have, our production, and they understand that combination with tomahawks, because we speak about it. We don't speak about tomahawks like tomahawks. We need combination. And that's why they're afraid of this combination. They understand what we can do.
Clearly, on begged, borrowed or stolen weapons, a war can never be fought and won. And that is why Prime Minister Narendra Modi's message to the country from on board INS Vikrant becomes extremely important. And that is why Atmanirbhar Bharat in defense is so important. The manufacture of 41 ship or submarine entering Indian Navy's every 40 days, the fact that we make our own BrahMos supersonic cruise missiles, the fact that LCA Mark 1A is now being manufactured in India, the fact that we hope to make our own fighter jet engine, that is why Atmanirbhar Bharat in defense is so important. That's the biggest message on Deepavali. I want to thank all my guests for joining me on this Diwali special, for being a part of the India Today family celebrations. Thank you very much for joining me and wish you all and our viewers a very, very happy Diwali and a great new year ahead. A quick break. News and updates continue on India Today. Stay with us.